I want to be taking today's stream and making it and turning it into a little bit of a deck building session, because the most powerful deck in the TCG, in my opinion, is Labrynth. And I want to be I want to build that. I want to build Labrynth, and you guys know this by now, the way we do this. We have the setup here. I have prepared all the cards I want to talk about. It's quite a few cards that we're going to consider during deck building. But we're gonna build Labrynth, and then we're also gonna play it later against Farfa. Before we start with Labrynth, though, before we start doing Labrynth, I want to give you guys a quick update on the runic deck we built last week, because, you know, I don't want this to be a we build a deck one time and then we never go back and reflect on it kind of thing, right? I have already updated the runic deck that we played against Pack, and some of the changes that I made I have already talked about. So we're gonna go through this relatively quickly, because I've left most of it the same. The changes that I've made is I've taken out pretty much what I said after we dueled Pack. I've taken out the Vision Resonator package, which was 3 cards. And I have added in a third Triple Tactics Talents and 2 more Runics, because I was struggling to draw these in testing. So it's a second Smiting Storm. And I've decided to go with 1 Golden Droplet, because I didn't want to go with a third of these. You could try that, but I wanted to minimize the amount of duplicates you draw. So I've added in the Golden Droplet. And the rest is still exactly the same. It's still the Black Garden, Earthbound Prison, Runic Fountain. So it's just -3... Vision Resonator cards plus a Tactics plus 2 Runics, makes it 40 cards, and it looks pretty clean. It's got 20 Runic quick plays now, which is pretty nice, and that's that, right? It means that you get 1 more slot in the side deck as well, because the third Talents was in the side deck. I haven't decided what I wanted to make of that yet, though. Like, if you want to try the deck, feel free to experiment with the side deck slot. As far as the extra deck goes, we've talked about trying to add Dispatter and Crimson Dragon, in order to go like Omega into double hand rip, right? Which is something I think the only thing you could cut for this is Ancient Fairy plus Chengying. Maybe the Metal Marcher. Right? But that's about it. That's where we currently stand on the runic Earthbound. And my plan on this sort of stuff in the future is that, like I said, I don't want to build these decks once, then maybe play 1 match with it and then move it to the side. I'm gonna keep it built, and I'm gonna just look for ways on how we can have more gameplay as well. Like, I don't want it to be like, okay, we have 1 match per stream or something like that, right? So I'm gonna make I'm gonna look for ways on how we can get just more games going, right? And so we can play multiple different decks on a stream, or we can play more games with the same deck on stream, that kind of stuff, right? So I'll yeah. The way you make this pattern without Ancient Fairy is obviously you summon Crimson Dragon. Like, you summon Baron, and then you summon Crimson Dragon, and then Crimson Dragon tags back out into the Dispatter. You don't actually synchro summon the Dispatter the hard way. You summon it with Crimson Dragon. That's why these two have to go in together. And the Crimson Dragon is relatively easy to make, because you have level 3 tuners, and you just put up, like, you just bring out Sleipnir to make the Crimson Dragon, right? That's the plan. Right, that would be the plan in that scenario. Or you could even make it with the Croc. You could make the Croc and make a bring up the level 3 synchro next to it, level 3 tuner next to it, and then make the Crimson Dragon. Is Sleipnir needed? I mean, technically, if you adjust your extra deck, you can probably get away without it if you have different options that you can summon instead. I think I like it. I think it's good. I wouldn't say it's 100% mandatory, though. Okay. that's it for that. Also, Goose XI, thank you for the Prime. As always, if you guys are enjoying the streams and want to support, using your free Prime subscriptions on the channel always means a lot to me. But in general, thank you guys so much for watching and subscribing and supporting the channel as much as you have been doing in the past. So, okay. For Labrynth, I thought to myself this morning, hey, this is not going to take long, because Labrynth as a deck seems like it's very figured out, right? Like people have been playing it for a long time. It's not like we are cooking up a completely new sort of strategy here. But then I realized, so the way I prepare for these streams is I just go through my collection and I take out all the cards that I think are worth talking about, right? Which is why you have like a lot of cards, even though we're only building a 40 card deck. I don't go into this with already a set list in mind that I want to end on, because this is actually meant to be the deck building process, right? It's not like I go in here with a list that is already done. I've taken out all the cards that I want to think about today. And so I realized, hey, there's actually a lot of things that are worth considering. You know, there's different engines for Labrynth. You know, there's the Dinka Bui version from YCS Bologna that I want to look at. You know, there's the Unchained package. There's all other kinds of things. Maybe in general, we need to talk about what changes with the inclusion of transaction rollback. You know, there's one thing I know for sure, and that is that I want to be building a furniture version of Labrynth. And I do want to play triple transaction rollback. I think this is the main reason to play Labrynth right now, is that furnitures and transaction rollback I think this gives the deck what it needed to be a top tier contender. So just as a reminder, or if you know, because this card is relatively new, transaction rollback has a field effect that is barely relevant, because on the field it lets you copy a trap from your opponent's graveyard, which obviously doesn't come up very often. It can, but it doesn't come up very often. But in the graveyard, you can banish it from your graveyard, pay half your life points, and copy the effect of a different trap card in your graveyard. Normal trap card. So this makes it the perfect card for Labrynth, because it solves a huge chunk of Labrynth's problems. It's not only just a good card in general that you can discard for your furnitures, because that is a problem that Labrynth has. You know, the furnitures require you to discard other cards from your hand, which you do want to discard something off value for. Otherwise, you know, you might be running out of cards at some point. And transaction rollback is obviously a phenomenal discard for the furniture pieces, right? But at the same time, it's also, I think, the best solution that Labrynth has to play around Ash Blossom, right? Because Ash Blossom is one of the best cards against Labrynth. Not only Ash, but also, I guess, Bell, right? Bell is another card that really, the combo heavy, big welcome centered furniture Labrynth decks have really been struggling with getting hit with an early Bell or Ash Blossom, right? Because once you get going with Labrynth, it's not really a big issue if you get hit with another Bell or Ash later on in the game. But in the early stages, an Ash or a Bell is super huge against the deck, because it not only stops your big welcome from doing anything, but it also stops all of your graveyard triggers to go off, right? Like your furnitures in the graveyard from coming back and all that kind of stuff. Like if you can't manage to get all the initial investment back, you run out of cards really fast with Labrynth. And so what transaction rollback does is, if your big welcome or your welcome lab, whichever one is more important to you, if that one gets ashed, it goes to the graveyard, and then if you have a transaction rollback in your graveyard, you can just banish that to copy the effect of the trap card that got negated. Because even though they are once per turn, transaction rollback circumvents that once per turn clause on the welcome Labrynths, because you are not activating another copy of the card, you're just copying the effect, and that is not something that a once per turn clause prevents you from doing. So you can activate Big Welcome, it gets ashed, and then you can copy it with transaction rollback, so you still get to do everything you want to do. So essentially, having a transaction rollback in your opening hand alongside a furniture is basically like drawing a Cult by the Grave that you don't have to keep in your hand. You can just discard it for your furniture. So that is the best part about transaction rollback. And then obviously, beyond that, if your opponent doesn't have a hand trap, if your opponent doesn't have a hand trap, transaction rollback can get even crazier, because then you can even afford to copy some other traps, like you can use the Daruma Karma Cannon twice, you can use a Ice Dragon's Prison twice, whichever powerful traps you decide to play, you can just copy them again, right? Which makes it pretty much the setup almost unbreakable if you can put a transaction rollback into your graveyard alongside. You cannot copy, because someone was asking that in chat right now, you cannot copy the bounce effect of Big Welcome Labrynth, because transaction rollback specifically reads, this effect becomes that card activation effect. An activation effect is the one that happens when you have the card set and you flip it up. That is always the effect that transaction rollback will copy. Right? So, that being said, long story short, one way I like to start working on a deck that is already existent, basically, because last time we built the Runic Earthbound deck was pretty much a completely new concept that we had to figure out. Here, Labrynth obviously is already an established concept, and we already know roughly which cards are good. So what I like is I want to work out a kind of quote unquote like a minimum of cards that I want to be playing, and that's sort of gonna be our skeleton that we can work around, right? And so, for example, I'm pretty convinced I want to be playing the full amount of furnitures and transaction rollback. That is going to be something that we're definitely going to be using. I'm not going to be messing around with those ratios, especially not in the beginning, because I think furnitures at its maximum are very good for consistency, and if you already max out on furnitures, I'm pretty sure you want to be maxing out on transaction rollback, because it's a phenomenal discard for the furnitures, right? You're always going to play one Lovely. I have a second one laying around, but I don't think we're ever going to be using it, you know? So yeah. Do you not have concerns with rollback being bricky if you don't have furniture access? Okay, so not really, because I think not having furniture access is a situation that is very rare, because you already have, like, Ariana fetches furnitures, all your big welcomes fetch Ariana so they can fetch furniture, right? Like, it's, for example, it's even completely reasonable, even if you just have big welcome, nothing else, right? What you can do is you can big welcome, summon a furniture, like alongside transaction rollback, I mean, right? Is you can summon furniture, bounce it, and then you can just put it into the graveyard and just copy your previous used big welcome, right? And so you still, even in that scenario, you get some mileage out of the transaction rollback, because it just transforms into the furniture as well. You can pitch it for Muckraker. The thing with Muckraker is that Muckraker already means that you are playing the game, essentially, right? Which means you can already search furniture. But yeah. I don't think it's completely unreasonable to think about playing less transaction rollback eventually. However, I think in this case, it's a matter of the card is so good that I want to start with playing 3. And if I ever feel like I want less, I can still cut it. But I think the card is so powerful that you want to start with the maximum amount. Okay. Next up, we have Lady Labrynth, which is a card that I'm gonna be honest with you, this card, whenever I'm playing Furniture Lab, I can see myself playing almost any amount of this. I can see myself playing 1 and it could be okay. I can see myself playing 2. I can see myself playing 3. Most people, I think, are playing 2 copies, and I think 2 copies is quote unquote the minimum that I want to settle on. This does not mean we're not going to put in the third one later, but for like, I think as a good baseline, I think 2 is fine. One is something that I have done in the past in some formats. That basically, because one lady is the kind of card that if you get interrupted, if you get hand trapped, if you don't have other engine or anything like that, lady basically adds nothing. It doesn't play on its own. But if you have a playable hand, if your Labrynth trap resolves or something like that, lady is what really puts it over the top, right? This is what makes your openers pretty much unbeatable if your opponent doesn't have the perfect answers for it. And so I do like playing more than one, especially in a format where you're expecting some mirror matches, because this card is phenomenal in the Labrynth mirror match. And that would be my main argument for playing a third. If people play a lot of Labrynth, maybe at your locals or whatever, I would recommend playing the third lady like easily. But I'm gonna set it aside as an option for now. We're gonna be playing 2 in the beginning, probably. We'll see. We'll have to see how the numbers work out. And now here's 3 cards that I want to talk about that I am not entirely sure how many I want to play and how many I like. And those are obviously, those are Arias, those are Ariane, and those are Kuklok. Ariane is a card that I find gets at least a little bit of mileage out of transaction rollback being in the game now. I think you can at least consider playing like 1 copy as an additional starter. I don't think it's outrageous to think about that. Because Ariane discarding transaction rollback is pretty damn fire. Ariane discarding your big welcomes is like, basically what Ariane suffers from is 2 things. The first thing is she's not a 1-card combo. Like, she only works alongside another trap card, and the only trap cards you really like sending away for Ariane are the big welcomes previously. So you only had like 6 pairings to really pair with Ariane to be good. Now that you have transaction rollback, you have 9, right? You have 9 cards that you can pair Ariane with to get mileage out of. So I think it's worth considering. At least we're gonna have to see if we have room to test out the Ariane. But it's a card that I have in the back of my mind, and I do think it's a viable option, maybe as a one-off. Then we have the typical question of how many Kukloks, how many Arias do we play, which is something that I really don't know. Once again, I can see myself playing 1 Kuklok, no issues. I can see myself playing 3 Kuklok and going more combo heavy. I can see myself settle in the middle with 2. And Arias is kind of the same thing. Both of these cards are basically risky, high risk, high reward kind of cards, because they don't work in most hands. Like, Kuklok works specifically if you have, like, going first, Kuklok works in a lot of hands, but specifically going second, which is what you're more worried about, Kuklok only really works if you draw it together with a furniture. But if you draw it together with a furniture, it's really good, right? Arias, on the other hand, is weird. Arias is a weird card because it's really good in the good hands, but then really bad in the bad hands where you don't have a pairing for it. But Arias also makes it more likely for you to open your Kuklok combos. That's really the main purpose of Arias, is if you have a big welcome, a welcome lab, or an Ariana, which we're obviously going to play 3 Arianas. If you pair your Arias with any of these guys, you can potentially assemble your combo pieces like on your opponent's first turn even, right? Like, if you open, let's say, furniture, Arias, welcome lab, without the Arias, this basically doesn't do anything, but because you have the Arias, you can Arias the welcome lab into an Ariana to get your Ku-Klok, and now you have furniture Ku-Klok combo, right? So it kind of circumvents some awkward hands. And of course, sometimes you can also just set one of your powerful trap cards, like your whatever you play, your Dogmatica Punishment, your transaction, not transaction rollback, your Dogmatica Punishment, your Ice Dragon's Prison, your Daruma Karmic Cannon, whatever. I think the most risky approach would just to play 3 of each. However, I simply don't think we're gonna have the room for that either. So for now, I think the minimum that I want to be playing is, you're always going to play 1 Ku-Klok, but there's definitely options to play more. Arias is a card that also you're always going to play at least 1, but there's a good chance we're playing more Arias. There's a good chance we're going 2 to 3 Arias, but not a 100% chance. So I'm also going to move that to the side for now, because it's not a guarantee. I really want to work out what I want to be the minimum for the deck. So, and the minimum I think is 1 Arias. I'm pretty sure we're gonna be playing the field spell in the initial build. I think the field spell is pretty good. As well as we're gonna be playing 3 big welcomes and at least 2 welcomes. I'm leaning I like playing 3. I'm a fan of 3 welcome Labrynths because it pairs well with Arias. It's also obviously, besides transaction rollback, it's one of the best discards for furniture that there is. It's a great card going first, because if you draw welcome Labrynth, you can make it so your big welcome is safe from Ash, because the card that people want to Ash or want to Bell is big welcome, obviously. So what you can do is you can just welcome Labrynth out your lovely, and that makes it so your big welcome can't be ashed or belled. So that's I think that's why I want to be playing 3 welcome labs, but it depends a little bit on how much room we have. So, and this puts us to basically, these are the options over here that I could see myself throwing into the deck. Which is the 3rd welcome, the 1 Ariane, the 2nd and 3rd Aria, 2nd and 3rd Ku-Klok, and 1 Lady Labrynth, right? The 3rd Lady. Those are the options that are not guaranteed to make it into the main deck, but could, right? So I'm going to put these to the side for now. And we're going to think about these later when we see how much room we really have. Because the minimum that we're going to have is this, which let me move this to the side so I can place it down a little bit better. So we're definitely gonna have 3 Arianas, 3 Chandeliers, 3 Stovies, puts us to 9 cards. We're gonna have 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 18, 21, 23 cards is the minimum, essentially, right? Plus minus, well, plus some amount of these. So we are relatively open in terms of what kind of non-engine we can main deck. Obviously there's a couple things, like Extravagance is great, hand traps are great, Called By is great. Let me take out some of the more obvious things that we definitely need to talk about. As far as hand traps go, in the current format, I think most likely we're going to be settling on some amount of these guys, which is that's probably not a shocker to anyone. It's probably going to be, we're going to be trying to fit the maximum amount of these. I'm pretty sure this is the order of importance for this deck. It's Droll and Ash first, then Imperm and Nib. But yeah, we want to fit some amount. By the way, one of the core advantages I think that Labrynth has over some other strategies is the fact that some parts of the Labrynth engine already do something going second, right? Which is ironic because it's a trap deck, but the fact that like the Ku Klok combos with furniture, or like furniture with like a shuffler or something like this, your engine itself can turn into hand traps, which makes it significantly more likely to open multiple hand traps, because that's when hand traps are the most effective, right? Is when you draw them in multiples. But there simply isn't enough, there are not enough generically good hand traps that every deck can do this, right? Because I think past these 12 hand traps right now in the current format, there aren't many good hand traps anymore. Like even something like Effect Veiler is fine, but it's like it's a little tough to really think of that many good hand traps, right? Bell is something we could consider. We can talk about Bell later, but I don't think Bell is generic enough overall. It's good against Lab, I suppose, but then you play Bell. What do you Bell against Rescue Ace, for example, right? Which is the second biggest threat. What do you Bell against? Like against Fire King, Bell is good. Emergency, you can't Bell Emergency. You can Bell Wanted, but that's it. Post Phantom, yeah, no, Post Phantom Nightmare is a different story, but I don't think Bell is good against Rescue Ace as of now. It's only Wanted, which it's good against Wanted, but that's like it's a little. Yeah, I don't like playing a hand trap that's only good against one card that's not searchable for my opponent. But Bell is okay. So we have this. Ideally, I would also really like to play these cards. Pot of Extravagance and Called by the Grave, I think, are phenomenal cards in Labrynth in general. And the only time I've seen someone not play Extravagance in the last couple months even was Dinka Bui with his transaction rollback, his Labrynth setup build, right? Which is probably something we have to decide on right now, is some other engines that are possible, right? Because you can just play this with Extravagance, some more of these guys over here, and then 12 hand traps, something along those lines, and it'd be fine. Like that's genuinely a good way to play Labrynth, and it might be the one that we end up on. But there's a couple things that I want to think about, right? And that is potential. This is like the Dinka Bui stuff, right? This is Dinka Bui cards. And then we have Shufflers, which are good. We have to think about our one of traps that we could be using. You know, the most prominent ones being like these, right? We have to think about some of these. These are more for the side deck, the Deflector and the ground. But then there's also this, right? And this is, I think, what I want to start with is the Unchained package. I want to start thinking about the Unchained package, right? So just so we're all on the same page, the Unchained package works in the following way, right? Let's say you're going first and you open, I don't know, Ariana. What would the combo be? It was like, is it like this Ariana? Let's say Ariana plus Welcome Labrynth or something like that, right? Clock Ariana. Okay, let's go Clock Ariana. Let's go Clock. No, let's go Ariana Big Welcome. Ariana Big Welcome. Yeah. If you open Ariana Big Welcome, what you can do is you could go Ariana, and then instead of searching Ku Klok, right, you could search Arias, right? And then you go Arias to set the Big Welcome, and then you activate the Big Welcome. And if they ash it, right? If they ash it, you chain Arias. Arias comes back. Now you have two Fiends. So you can go into... Where is it? I have the Unchained dudes here. You go Yama, right? Yama fetches you Sharvara. But then you have to use Sharvara on a on a different card, right? You can't use it on the Yama. You have to pop one of your back rows, right? Why not? Well, if you pop the Yama, you only have the Sharvara and nothing else, right? So what you would have to do is you would have to pop one of your back rows to summon Sharvara to make Unchained Soul of Rage, right? You make Unchained Soul of Rage, and then Sharvara sets you Escape of the Unchained, right? So the thing is, Ariana plus Big Welcome was just an example. There's a lot of different scenarios where this could happen, where if you get hand trapped because your Arias comes back as a free fiend, you can just go into the Yama line, right? The Yama Unchained Soul of Rage. My problem with this is that this is relatively extra deck heavy, because you need not only Unchained Soul of Yama and Unchained Soul of Rage, you also need something to link into, which is obvious. That's going to be SP Little Knight, probably. You probably don't even play Unicorn for it. But if you want to play Extravagance 2, it seems a little bit risky to do this with only one of each, because you need both for this to be worth something, right? And so you need two of each, I think. You need two of each. It's always just a backup plan. Yes, this is not something that would be your main plan if you play the deck. You would never really go. I guess you could sometimes if you have like a, you know, if the situation calls for it and you have two fiends, you could go for a Yama. Yeah, you could. But like generally, this is more like a backup plan for if you get hand trapped, so you're on your trap cards, so your Arias comes back, giving you an extra fiend, right? The problem is that you also have to play these two in the main deck, which obviously takes up space, but it also is something that you absolutely don't want to draw most of the time. Like, I suppose drawing Sharvara wouldn't be the end of the world, because you can pop your transaction rollback, for example, and just summon it out and make your you can just directly make Unchained Soul of Rage. Like, that'd be okay, right? Like, just summon Sharvara by popping whatever you don't need, and turn it into Unchained Soul of Rage with Ariana, for example. Set your trap. That's completely fine. So only one of the two is actually a brick. The Escape is a bad draw, though, because if you draw the Escape, it doesn't really do anything unless you can link into Yama. So unless you can already play, the Escape is a pretty bad draw. But I think this package is something I want to consider. I like the additional option, to be honest with you. I think it's a pretty cool line. I've been liking it in theory. It does include, though, playing more than one Arias. With one Arias, you wouldn't do this, I think. I think this is something you would play with like definitely 3 Arias, probably. Something like that. Right? The other option, and I think these two are exclusive to each other. I don't think you would do both of them together. The other option is to go about it in a similar way than as Dinkabui did, which was play the So what was Dinkabui's exact setup? It was 1 Labrynth setup, it was 3 trap tricks, and it was backjack, right? That was the package essentially, right? Nightshade, thank you for the 3 months. Appreciate the runic cooking input. And then obviously, so here's something that I liked about the Dinkabui deck, because I like Arias. I think Arias is one of the most powerful Labrynth tools available. But my issue with Arias in the standard quote-unquote Labrynth lists is that it's relatively risky. Let me move the Unchained cards to the side real quick here. To me, it felt relatively risky when I was considering Labrynth for Bologna, and I was playing a list that was very similar to the Ryan Yu one, which was triple Welcome Lab, triple Big Welcome Lab. Obviously, Transaction Rollback wasn't out yet, but I believe the one of traps was only it was Karma Cannon and IDP, I think. And then it also had Imperm, right? So this was I believe this was the Ryan Yu list, right? Which, if you go second with this deck, the Arias is just so unlikely to actually help you do anything, right? Because the only cards that it actually pairs up with is Karma Cannon, one of, but then again, you're losing 2 cards to resolve a Karma Cannon, so you might still not win, but Karma Cannon, okay, Karma Cannon works. Drawing Arias with Imperm is beyond pointless because you can already activate Imperm, so that doesn't count as a synergy. I guess IDP would work if it's good in the matchup. Big Welcome works with Arias. The problem with Big Welcome Arias combo is it's not a disruption for your opponent. Like, it doesn't do anything. Like, you Arias set Big Welcome, activate Big Welcome, now what? Like, you can search a Coup Clock with it, or a Furniture with it by just summoning and bouncing it. But that only is combo with more cards in your hand, right? Like, this is actually, this alone does not interrupt your opponent whatsoever. And the same is true for this, right? Even Arias plus Welcome Lab, which you would think is like, okay, perfect, I've drawn my trap card, I can immediately activate it with Arias, but it doesn't translate into any sort of disruption, right? And then obviously Arias can also special summon Ariana, which gives it another 3 synergy points. But once again, this also is not a 2-card combo, because whatever you search with Ariana only is a disruption if you have one other card in your hand that you can use with it. So for example, Arias, Ariana, Coup Clock, that's combo on your opponent's turn. You can go Arias, special Ariana, search the Furniture, and of course in this case Furniture or Coup Clock, I guess they're both Furnitures. When I say Furniture, I refer to Stovey and Chandelier, but these two together will then disrupt your opponent, right? So if you have Arias plus Ariana plus a Furniture piece, that's gonna be a disruption, right? So Arias is only really good in the standard Furniture Lab list in like 3-card combos, right? Is the point I'm trying to get across, right? And all of those 3-card combos omega lose if your opponent has Bell or Ash for your Big Welcome, right? Is also another thing. Like, even if you manage to draw a 3-card combo, you still get completely stopped in your tracks by one hand trap that's probably in your opponent's deck, right? So that's why for Bologna in that version, I was not gonna play 3 Arias. I don't think. I think it's better to play less in those kind of situations. But Dinka Bui did something interesting, which was he threw a Trap Trick into the occasion, right? Into the equation. He threw Trap Trick into the deck, and Trap Trick made it so that the list had not only was Trap Trick pretty much the perfect card to draw with Arias, because you can choose which trap you want in that situation. It also obviously made it so that he had to play multiples of other trap cards, so there was also double Daruma Karma Cannon in the deck, right? So you had more chance of just drawing Arias plus Daruma, right? So it's a version that I think is pretty cool. To be honest, the fact that he also played Backjack and Labrynth setup is, I think, also cool, but I don't think these necessarily have something to do with each other, if you get what I'm saying. Like, you can play Trap Trick with more traps if you want to, just to make the arias more powerful. You don't have to necessarily play the Backjack for it. Or the Labrynth setup, which obviously the Labrynth setup, the point of Labrynth setup, which is probably something we should talk about in a second. This card, in case you're not familiar with it, because people have not been playing it in Labrynth a lot. Target 2 of your Labrynth spells or traps that are banished or in your grave, except Labrynth setup. Shuffle them into the deck. Then, if you control a fiend, you can set non-Labrynth normal traps with different names directly from your deck equal to the number shuffled. This card is basically... it does nothing in the early game after you've set up, but once if you ever resolve this card, you will never lose a grind game, essentially, right? You will always lock down the game with this card if you can get to it, if you can resolve it. And this, I think this makes it a very powerful card. I've looked at this card in the past and I've like, this card looks strong, but I've never actually gotten around to using it. So I think there is a world where you play a more, let me see, a more trap heavy version of Lab, with like multiple Karma Cannons, maybe multiple IDPs. I don't know exactly what do you think the best normal trap cards are right now? Surely the Ruma Karma Cannon is up there. I think Terrors of the Overroot might be up there. I'm personally a huge fan of Dogmatica Punishment. I'm a huge fan of Dogmatica Punishment, but Punishment is gonna make some problems when it comes to the extra deck. But I'm a Dogmatica Punishment stan. So I think for the main deck, it's gonna be between these 4 trap cards. I'm not a fan of main decking Eradicator. I'm not a fan of main decking D-Barrier, because I think they are too situational. And I think the reality of things is, in general, whether you play Trap Trick or not, the reality is you play these as at least a one-of, because they are searchable with Lady Labrynth, right? The truth of the matter is, if you can ever get into a board state where you can summon Lady Labrynth, activate a normal trap, your opponent has no response, you chain Lady Labrynth to get one of these guys out, and then you even have a coup clock ready to use it immediately, right? If all those things happen, you are in an incredibly good situation, no matter which of these traps you play, which of these traps you get off of the Lady Labrynth, right? So I honestly don't even think you need to play that many of these, because I think in most scenarios, which one you get is not that relevant. Because even if you play let's say you don't play IDP, and then you run into a deck where IDP is completely broken, sure, that sucks. You would be like, okay, I wish I had IDP in my deck. At the same time, if you just get Karma Cannon instead, it's fine. Like, it's completely fine. I've seen a lot of builds that play 0. Honestly, even that would be okay. Like, even if you just get a free imperm in whichever column you want, could be enough. Because once again, this is a scenario where Labrynth is already winning, and that's something that I feel like you need to understand if you play Labrynth. This deck is all about just stabilizing in a position where you get into the grind game and you resolve all your things over multiple turns. If you ever get there, if you ever get to this state, Labrynth is unbeatable. It's unbeatable if you ever get into that situation where you're grinding with Labrynth, right? Where your opponent's board isn't huge and you both have like limited resources, because Labrynth just does so much with limited resources. You've all seen the freaking the triggers pop up when we've played Labrynth on Master Duel. If you ever get into that winning position, you resolve that one crucial big welcome, and you have like 4 trigger effects that pop up. That's the situation you need to get to. That's the situation where Labrynth has won the game at that spot. This is the exact moment where you've done it with Labrynth, right? When that happens, right? And whichever one of trap you search off of your lady does not really matter for that situation. So yeah, that is that. But I think mainly Trap Trick is a card that I want to consider if I want to be playing triple areas, because I'm not gonna lie, I kind of want to play 3 areas, but I'm not sure if I like it. If, let's say, my trap lineup is this. If my trap lineup is this and I play 3 Ariana, I'm not sure if I'm a fan of 3 Arias, because it's only going to be a good pairing with my 1 of Karma Cannon, my 3 Ariana, my 3 Welcome, my 3 Big Welcome. It's not that many good pairings for it. But I think Arias is the key to making this deck work. Because Arias, I think is what makes it flow, right? I think Arias is what makes it flow, especially if we decide to play the Unchained guys, which I would like to try. So, that being said, let's recap. So we had our bare minimum, which was 3, 2, 3, 1 transaction rollback. These 23 cards. It was 23, right? If we were to add, and the 1 Kuklok was also there. If we were to add 3 Extravagance, 2 more areas, that puts us to 28. We add a Karma Cannon, right? That's not in here yet. Nope. We add a Karma Cannon, that puts us to 29. We add the third of this, which puts us to 30. If we want to play the Unchains, we are already at 32. It's getting slim. It's very hard to fit all of the things you want to fit into this deck, because now even now we only have room for 8 hand traps, which doesn't feel that great. So ideally, I was hoping to fit all 12. I'm not gonna lie, I was hoping to fit all 12 hand traps. So that's gonna be tough. Hold up. Three Ariana. I should just leave this up for better visual. This, right? This is your furniture part. You're gonna play 3. Maybe it's 2 Arias. Maybe you just can't afford to fit all 3. Then I don't see a reason. I'm gonna be honest with you. Even in the Dinka Bui deck, I saw no reason not to play Pot of Extravagance. Because yeah, I know his deck was already over 40 cards, but even like I think this card is just, I feel like it's mandatory for this deck. So 3 big welcomes, and I am a fan of 3 welcomes, right? And it's gonna be 3 rollbacks. So essentially, what I'm feeling is that with transaction rollback, becoming a main deck staple, which it is a main deck staple 100%. I feel like the room to really play Arias with Trap Trick and multiple of some of the trap cards isn't really there. I don't really see it, because we would be going over 40 without even playing a single hand trap almost, right? X-Trap was cut mostly because it made Backjack math even worse. Okay, well, I'm not a huge fan of Backjack anymore, because I get Backjack being a good furniture discard, but I think Transaction Rollback just does that better. So, yeah. Why do you ignore Skill Drain? Because I don't think Skill Drain is a good card for Labrynth, unironically. Especially not for game 1. I don't think you need it. The deck is good enough without it. It doesn't need it. It doesn't actually help you achieve your win condition. What about the Nadir Servant package? I mean, you could, but it's not better than X-Trap, I don't think. I would rather draw 2 cards than draw a random card with Garura and then search an Ecclesia, I think. IDP is good this format. So name a deck in the format. So like I said earlier, it's another thing. I'm not saying IDP is bad in this format. I'm just saying, if you want to put in one IDP, right? That card is it's a random card. You're not going to draw it that often. So the main purpose is to search it with Lady Labrynth, right? So my question to you is, name a deck where if you're resolving all of that, right? If you go Lady, activate one of the welcome traps, chain Lady, your opponent does nothing to it. Name a matchup where you need IDP over like Karma Cannon, for example. The Mirror? Dude, in the Mirror, you can just grab a Transaction Rollback if you really want to. Fire King? Fire King loses. Like, Fire King has no... Fire King is dead at that point. If you... Dude, if you lose to Fire King after doing all of that with a Daruma Karma Cannon, that's a you issue. That's not an IDP issue. You need more than an IDP to fix that problem. If you seriously lose to Fire King after doing all of this, that's not a IDP was missing issue. Because you have to think about the surroundings of when it comes up. Because if I'm in a situation against Fire King where I have resolved all of those cards and I've gotten a trap card from my Lady and I can even activate it immediately, which means I either have Ku Klok on top of it, or I lived through the entire turn. It's a win. What I'm saying is it's a winning situation anyways. I'm not saying IDP is bad. I'm just saying, like, you're winning that game anyways. I don't need it, right? I don't need IDP to win that game. I can win it with a Karma Cannon. I can probably win it with an Imperm, to tell you the truth. You can probably win it with an Imperm in that situation, even against Fire King. Fire King is not that strong in the grind game. Like, this deck's stronger in the grind game than Fire King. In the mirror match, IDP is good. I could see it for the mirror match if the mirror match is super popular. But even then, I'm gonna be honest, in the mirror match, I would even rather play a third Lady in the main deck than the random IDP, I think. Like, this card is much better for the mirror. Okay. So, if we want to go super cookie cutter, Jay Tothek, thank you so much for the first time subscription. Appreciate that. Also, Vandy, we had with the first time Prime. Always appreciate to see new people with the Primes. Means we're growing the community. Appreciate you. Thank you. Welcome, welcome. Very cookie cutter. 10 traps. 14, 17, 20, 30. 30 cards, right? Maybe could go down on Arias or Welcome slightly. I think a good place for this deck to be in terms of hand trap wise is somewhere between 9 and 12. I don't think this deck is one of the decks that necessarily needs 12, because once again, you can pair some of your furnitures to to quote unquote make up a hand trap on the fly sometimes. I don't think it's 3. This does not look right. It doesn't look like it's a 3 Arias list that I'm building right now. It does not look like a triple Arias. Unless we decide to play even more trap cards. The problem is the more Arias you cut, does it still make sense to try out the Unchained guys even with less Arias is what I'm considering, because the main way you would make the Unchained guys is with Arias, no? The thing about the Unchained cards is I think it's one of those matters where the cards, when you just think about them in theory, you're like, okay, they might be okay, but they also are kind of bricky. I think this is the sort of thing that you just have to try, right? You have to try to see if it comes up, and then you feel you think about, okay, was it worth it or not, right? And that's why I want them in there. I think that's a good way to go about deck building and deck testing, is just try the stuff out that you're uncertain about, right? Like, for example, the Unchained cards are something that just theory doesn't always get you there. So I want to shoot for a version that plays these two guys, right? Let's just say it like that. Later on, we're gonna play this deck against Farfa later. I want those cards to be in the deck just to see how it's gonna work, right? How those cards work. That's what I want to see. So with that kind of being the, let's say that's the situation we're in, I want to play those cards, right? What's Farfa? I don't know what Farfa's running. That would kind of ruin the purpose, right? -2 Arias, minus Lady, minus Welcome, plus Unchained cards, plus 12 hand traps. I thought about going down to 1 Lady, but I'm gonna be honest, I think currently with Labrynth being one of the most expected decks, I find it questionable to cut Lady down to 1. I feel like Lady is at least a 2 in a format where Labrynth is to be expected. The card is so good in the mirror match. It's so strong in the mirror match. I think cutting Arias down to 2 is reasonable. Which would put us, this was 30, now it's 31. If we take out 1 Arias, add these 2, we can play 9 hand traps, and that would be something I could live with. That would be a list that I could see myself using, you know, with the, yeah. It doesn't have called by though, which also seems like something we would want. But I guess the Unchained package also helps you play through hand traps. But called by seems pretty good. And I also kind of want to try the Ariane, but I'm okay with not playing it. I could live with it. Another thing we have to figure out, if we're playing Extravagance, before we decide on these last couple slots, I wanna talk about something else. Let me make some room here. Because something that's important about playing Extravagance together with the Unchained cards is that we are able to fit these 4 cards into the extra deck. I have to see if that's possible to begin with. So currently I have a lot of cards here for the extra deck. We're gonna have to, I'm sorry, we're gonna have to proc 2 Chaos Angels, because ain't no way I own 3 Chaos Angels at the moment. You probably play 3 Chaos Angels, I only have 1. I wanted to play 3 Muckraker and 3 Typhon, but I'm getting a feeling that we don't have the room for that if we want to play the Unchains. You also, I think you need 2 SPs, unfortunately. This, unlike the Earthbound Runic that we built, this one is not quite going to be a budget deck, mainly because of Extravagance. So And this would already be it if you have to. This is 15. This is 15, so we can't play any of the other options. No Dark, no Anima, no Goddess even, no Nightmare Unicorn, no Baguska, nothing. Obviously, we haven't even started thinking about punishment fusions, you know, like... So you would probably... I mean, it'd probably be okay to play 2 Muckraker, 2 Typhon. If you play... Like, it'd probably be okay to play 2 of these options instead, right? 2 of, like, in general, what are the odds? And I actually don't know. What are the odds that you hit 2 of, like, if you play a 2 of and you banish both with Extravagance? What are the odds for that? The probability goes 40, 14, and 4. So if you play... So what you're saying is if you only play a card once, the chance that it goes banished is 40%. If you play it twice, the chance is 14. If you play it 3 times, it's 4%. Okay. Roughly. Okay. I'll just believe you on that. It sounds about right. It sounds about right in my head. The other option is obviously it's 50% because you either do or you don't. That's fair enough. That's also a good point. Good point. That's I like where your head's at. I think it would be okay to play 2-2-2 then. Which we've also just saved like $100, I suppose. And then I would probably say Goddess, Anima, Baguska? Question mark? Maybe Dark. How important is Dark? Dark would help you make a Little Knight if you're not locked into Fiends. Helps you make a Little Knight that can banish. Dark's probably better. Yeah, I was thinking the same. Baguska seems good if we did decide to play Ariane. So there is, okay, that's the only thing I wanted to figure out for now. There is a way to build the extra deck with the Unchained cards. It's a little bit more risky in regards of the Extravagance banishes, but it is possible if we do it like this. It is possible. So the extra deck would be 2 Chaos Angel, 2 Typhon, 2 Muckraker, 2 SP. Dude, if someone did this to their main deck, like 2 of each, I'd be mad at them. But it's a different situation here. And then this, right? Don't you play Clara and Rushka? Clara and Rushka is good. But I don't think, with the Unchained cards, I don't think you can afford to. Because I think these 3 are more important. So, yeah. Double check, the probabilities are in fact 40, 14, 4, which would make 2 of good enough. I mean, it's still on a super important card. I'm gonna be honest, even 14% isn't ideal, because 14% is like that's like more than 1 out of 10 prosperities. Almost 1 in 6 prosperities. It's like what is it, 1 in 7? Yeah, almost like roughly 1 in 7 prosperities would screw you up, right? Which is Extravagance rather, not prosperity. 1 in 7 can screw you up, which is like, yeah. Also, what you have to think about is another thing when you talk about these sort of statistics, right? The 14% is the chance to banish 2 of a specific card, like Chaos Angel, right? The chance when I activate Extravagance to banish both Chaos Angels is 14%, right? But it's also a 14% chance to banish both Typhons, or both Muckrakers, or both SPs, or both Yamas, or both Unchained Soul of Rages, right? So there's more than a 14% chance that the Extravagance could mess you up in some way. But obviously then, on another note, the it doesn't always mean that that you lose the game because of it, right? Like sometimes you banish both Chaos Angels, but you didn't need it. anyways. Like, you can find a way to win without it. So it's very hard to put an exact number out there of like, okay, this is fine or this is not fine, or you lose X amount of games because of prosperity. Like, it's very hard to put that into exact numbers to evaluate those statistics. It's basically like from a gut feeling, and this is really something in these sort of situations where the math is there, but it doesn't exactly tell you what to do. I think experience is important, and I've played Extravagance a fair amount with 2ofs, and I feel like it's been okay the majority of the time. I don't even remember a time where I actually lost the game because of a double Extravagance banish. So my gut feeling tells me 2ofs is okay here. And the I would say the math is okay behind it, but it's something that's hard to put into exact numbers in this situation. So yeah. Also, keep in mind, this is before Phantom Nightmare, because we're going to be playing with this deck today. So this does not include. I guess I can bring it up real quick, because it's worth. We are talking about Labrynth relatively in depth. There is a card in Phantom Nightmare that I believe is going to become a staple in Labrynth as well. Not as a 3-of, but people are definitely going to play it. And it's a card that was previously known under the name Rumpelteufel, which was the Japanese name, which was German words for some reason. It's a normal trap card that reads as follows. Declare one monster card name. This turn, neither player can special summon monsters with that original name except from the graveyard. You can banish this card from the grave, then declare a monster card name. This turn, neither player can activate the effects of monsters on the field with that original name. You can only use one Black Goat Laughs effect per turn and only once that turn. I have no idea why it's called the Black Goat Laughs. No idea. But the reason why this card is going to be good in Labrynth is because it's a good discard for furniture, and it also has a good effect on the field. Like the field effect is actually crazy. Like, it's crazier than you think. But like, imagine, for example, playing against Runic, your opponent activates a Runic spell to special summon, and you call Hugin. It's curtains. Your opponent plays Pearly, activates a Pearly quick play. You call either Pearly or Pearlily. It's probably curtains. You play against Unchained and you call Yama. You play against whatever, you name it. You play against Fire King. They activate Wanted. You call Diabellstar. All these kind of situations, right? Like, this card is actually really good. It's kind of like a trap prohibition, which makes it in that case actually better, which is funny because normally spell cards are better than trap cards. But the ability to declare the thing in response to something and like as a quick effect is very, very massive. And then on top of it, it has another effect in the graveyard. You can't use both in the same turn, but if you discard it for furniture, you can immediately use it. So like, let's say your opponent summons your opponent once again, same example. Your opponent activates a Runic quick play to summon. You chain furniture, discard this card, chain, immediately banish it to call Hugin. Your opponent now can't summon Hugin and use it. They can summon it, but they can't use it. All these kind of things. Your opponent adds a Diabellstar, and you go the furniture, discard this card, banish, call Diabellstar. This Diabellstar is now useless. Your opponent summons Turbulence. Turbulence is not a summon trigger. Turbulence is an ignition effect. So when the Turbulence is being summoned, you just banish this thing and call Turbulence. They can't use it. And there's almost no card in Yu-Gi-Oh that interacts with this. You can't call by that interaction. You can't you cannot do some fancy stuff like SP Little Knight your own Turbulence to dodge it. You can't remove the Turbulence from the field and bring it back later with a preventer, like if it was impermed or something like that. There's nothing you can do about it. If your entire deck revolves around Turbulence set 4 and your opponent goes Black Goat Laughs, declares Turbulence, It's Jover. You can't do anything about it. So this card is very powerful. And it's specifically good in Labrynth because you can discard it for furniture. Like, it's actually good going second if you do it like this, right? So, and this card is going to be a secret rare. This card is a secret rare in Phantom Nightmare, obviously. It's a rare in the OCG, I think, judging from the picture, but it's in fact a secret rare in the TCG. So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. We're building this deck right now. With Phantom Nightmare, you would definitely try to fit... I've seen anything from 1 to 3 copies in the OCG. 20 euro in pre-sale? Yeah, the thing is, even though it is a good card, keep 2 things in mind. Keep 2 things in mind before you jump the gun and be like, yeah, this card is going to be crazy. I'm going to invest in hell of these because, you know, 2 things. The first thing, this card is exclusively being played in Labrynth. Almost exclusively. I haven't seen it in many other decks at all. And the second thing is, it's still a trap card. It still is a trap card. And this is, like, trap cards are not very good typically. And that is why it's exclusively being played in Labrynth. Because Labrynth can make use of it, like, by discarding it going second. All that kind of stuff, right? And like, in any... like, you know, it's good in Labrynth, but that does not mean it's going to be a huge money card, because neither is something like Arias. Like, how much is an Arias right now as a secret rare? I'm sure it's not more than 20. And I'd be surprised if it was, but I don't think Arias is a 20 euro secret. Now, granted, Arias is in general in a better set than the Black Goat Laughs, because Age of Overlord is just crazy, right? But still, you know, once again, I don't know anything about these freaking price developments, but I don't think the Teufel is going to be, the Black Goat, I don't think is going to be that expensive. It doesn't seem like a huge money card to me, because it's relatively niche still. Because Labrynth is not the deck to beat in the next format. The deck to beat would be Fire decks, and Fire decks don't play that card, so, you know. Okay, where were we at? We've went down to 2 Arias, okay, which is 3, 6, 9, 10, 12, 15, 19, 25, 31. So we could play 9 hand traps and call it a day. We could also cut 1 welcome for a Called by the Grave, which I think is smart. And then we get to play, out of these hand traps, which I think are the best ones in general, we get to play 9 copies is what we get to play here. So I'm always leaning towards, for some reason, when I play Labrynth, I just like playing Nibiru because it's so cool to do the Nib pitch furniture, and Nib is also one of the best cards to back up your open. Like, going first, unironically, sometimes going first, Labrynth doesn't feel that crazy. Because you just have less cards, and your biggest problem is actually even surviving the turn, right? And Nib is really good for that matter. At the same time, the other 3 just seem way too strong right now not to play, right? If this was just another side note, if this was post Phantom Nightmare, we wouldn't even be talking about Droll. Droll would be in the main deck immediately before I even add freaking big welcome Labrynth into my Labrynth deck. I'm putting Droll and Lockbird in next format, so this is for a pre-Phantom Nightmare still, is what I'm trying to think about right now. This seems good before Phantom Nightmare still, right? You could make an argument to play Nib over Droll, kind of like the same thing that we did in the Earthbound Runic last week, where I said, like, Droll and Dogbird is probably good enough, but it's also okay to side deck it. The same is true for Nibiru, though. You could also just side deck Nibiru. Wouldn't be the end of the world. That being said, I think the only card... If I want to try the Unchains, it would be completely reasonable to just cut the Unchains and play the Nibs as well. Like, that's one way you could do it. Like, if you want to... You could cut the 2 Unchains and 1 Arias to just play 12 hand traps. That'd be okay, I think. But I want to try the Unchains. That's why I'm going to leave them here for now. So this would be 40 cards, right? Unless I miscounted. 10, 10... 25, 30... Yeah, it's 40. And then... No, I kind of like this. This looks good to me as a starting point for testing. 0 Arias? I think Arias is essential if you play the Unchained guys. You can make them without Arias, but it certainly helps, especially if you get hand trapped on your big welcomes or welcome lab. I do kind of like the 2 Arias for that situation. I'm not entirely opposed to the concept of playing 1 Arias. I just want to say that I think it's okay to play cards like Kuklok and Arias. We've talked about that earlier, how both of these are like high risk, high reward, right? I think it'd be okay to play 1 of each and just search them, because this deck has a lot of searching power, right? If you have your high combo hands, your combo heavy hands, it would be possible to search these guys out and go like that, right? Like, I think it's totally reasonable to play 1 Clock, 1 Arias. Just go with a very consistent approach, right? In that case, I would say we could play the 3rd copy of Welcome Lab. We could try out 1 Ariane instead of 1 Arias. That also possible. Ariane is weird, because is it enough? Is it consistent enough with basically 9 good sendaways? Is that enough for me to play an Ariane? It doesn't feel like it. Right? It doesn't feel like playing Ariane with only 9 cards to essentially make her live. It doesn't feel like it, I think. Because it just seems risky, especially going second. It feels very risky on top of the chance that you just run into imperms or veilers and neg 1 into it. Maybe with Goat, honestly, after Phantom Nightmare, this deck changes again. We're probably gonna revisit it at some point. Like I said, this entire IRL cards situation, right, is something that we're going to do very regularly from now on, and we're going to play a lot more with these kind of things, so we can revisit this in 2 weeks, no problem. Like, we can go back and go like, okay, with the Black Goat Laughs, now we have another good trap to send for Ariane, so maybe now we try it, right? Completely possible. This is not like a one-time thing where we're building this deck once and then we never go back to it, because that's also never what deck building really is. Like, deck building will always be making a list in theory and then trying it and then adjusting, right? And so I think at this point I'm pretty happy about these 39 cards to try, and our last card is going to be a 3rd Welcome Lab or a 2nd Arias. One of these 2 cards is going to be the 3rd, the 40th card, I think, and then I'm gonna have we're gonna have 9 hand traps. 9 hand traps, and that's the thing. I think I'm gonna make it the Arias, though. I think I'm gonna make it the Arias. And that's looking good. That's looking good. And then if we ever decide, hey, this Unchained package doesn't come up, you have room for basically either you can just go full engine, right? You can add like the third Arias and the third Arias and the third Welcome, right? Instead of the 2 Unchains, or you can go with 2 Nibs, or even a third one if you cut 1 Arias again, right? You can go 12 hand traps as well, also possible. So this is 40 cards. And as a reminder, these are the cards that almost made it in, right? And are considerations for the future. The third Labrynth, the third Lady, where's the third Arias? The third Arias, the Ariane, I think is something I want to reconsider if we ever go for Black Goat Laughs after Phantom Nightmare. More Ku Klux is always an option. It's just that's also more risk, like high risk, high reward. If we had more space in the main deck, I'd be okay with playing 3 Ku Klux. I like the card. I think it's very cool, very fun to play with as well. If we had a little more space, I would do it, but space is so tight that I just can't really bring myself to do it. And Nibiru is also something that I was very close to putting in. The other cards that I have decided not to play on purpose, and I don't think I would, is I would not play the Shufflers in the main deck, because I would be careful with cards that are only good together with furniture, which is already the case with something like Ku Klux. If I go second and I have a Ku Klux, that only does something if I have furniture. And transaction rollback, honestly, is I believe it should be the main thing that you play that is mainly your furniture discard, right? Because if you draw transaction rollback plus one of these guys, it could put you in a weird situation because you can't discard both of them. So I think these are potentially something that we can side deck for a matchup where they are really good, which is something I will probably do, honestly, but I don't think I like main decking them at the moment. And that is another thing that I really like about the Black Goat Laughs, is that it's good when you can just set it and it's also a useful trap card, right? You don't have to discard it, right? That doesn't change post side, so how do you justify siding them? Well, no, there's definitely matchups where these are better than the transaction rollback. So you probably, going second especially, discarding transaction rollback for a furniture doesn't immediately do something, right? So if I'm playing against, let's say, Tearlaments, right, where these are really good, like I would rather side these in for going second and side out some transaction rollbacks. And going first, in general, usually you shouldn't have trouble even getting to multiple furnitures. So in that case, if you go first and you play against a matchup where these are good, you can just slap them in and play both and it's probably fine, right? The problem is building your deck for game 1. You don't know that you're going to be able to go first or second, and if these are going to be good for the matchup or not, which makes these more situational than transaction rollback, which is why transaction rollback is in the main deck. And these are not worth the risk, I think, of dead drawing them. And so we'll probably be side decking these. Yeah. Okay. And then to quickly recap the extra deck as well, we'll be playing 2 Chaos Angel. Sorry for the proxy, but that thing is $60 and I only have 1. 2 Typhons, 2 Muckrakers, 2 SP, basically 2 of all the important ones, 2 Yama and 2 Soul of Rage for the Unchained combo. And so this is the really important stuff. And then we have one-offs of some situational stuff. I'm aware there is more situational stuff that could come up. I genuinely think, I mean, obviously you would like to have all the situational stuff in here. I think these cover like 95% of your games, to be honest. But yeah. Unicorn might be important for when we are welcome locked. You mean like if we go for the Unchained combo and then, yeah, I guess you're not wrong. But at the same time, discarding is also pretty bad. So Anguish, a bomb. I mean, it's so tight though. How are we gonna fit Anguish, a bomb, Unicorn in here? Is that I don't know if it's possible. But I really want to try the Unchained engine. I mean, are we really just not gonna play these three? Right? Don't play Extrav? I think not playing Extrav is wrong. I think it's straight up wrong. I genuinely think it's not correct. You have to play Prosperity. Prosperity instead of Extrav. Extravagance is so good though. Like, Extravagance is so good. Didn't Christian Urena play the Unchains at when he topped YCS YCS Bologna? Is the list, did they make a deck profile? Let me check that out real quick. Let me see what he said about that situation. Hold up. Let me see. He topped the regional last weekend with rollback as well. Ooh, is that list out there too? Hold up, I'm He posted it an hour ago on his YouTube. Okay, if that's not a sign. All right, hold up. All right, no, yeah, Christian Urena is doing YouTube now, I think. Hold up. Let me see if I can find the channel to shout it out as well. Can I filter for channels specifically? Because it doesn't show me channel. Christian Urena Yugioh. Let me hit that subscribe button. I'll link you guys Christian Urena's channel. Phenomenal player. Phenomenal player, phenomenal deck builder. And we're gonna check out this. I'm gonna use this. We're gonna do I guess little react as well. And I can use that time to eat my food because it's probably already turned cold because it's hard to eat when you have cards in front of you. So I'll just do that real quick and we watch the Labrynth profile. Okay, so long story short, he was playing 3 Unchained Soul of Rage and 3 Yama. I don't even have a 3rd Unchained Soul of Rage. So for today, I think we're gonna risk it for the biscuit. I think I have a 3rd Yama, which we could play, I guess. Yeah, I do have a 3rd Yama. I don't have a 3rd Soul of Rage though. Yeah. So we might just risk it today with 2 and 2. In terms of the other things, I agree with 2 Chaos Angel, 2 Typhon. Cutting down to 1 Little Knight, the more I think about it, could be okay. Because it's not really like, it's, if you lose Little Knight, you have other options with your Unchained cards, right? You have other things you can link into with your opponent's cards. So what was his extra deck? It was 2/2 3/3, so that's 10 1/1 1/1, right? That's the extra, that was his extra deck with these, right? That'd be 15. So if we don't do this, we can play a second Muckraker and one out of these guys. I don't think I'm gonna do this. Nah, you know, what would be the most important, you think? As a 15th card, if this is our extra deck. Hold up. We had all this. And we can play one more out of like these. Anima. So the main reason for Anima, by the way, the main reason for Anima is not that you can really take one of your opponent's monsters, which I mean, sometimes you can. It's mostly so that you can, if you have like a Coup Clock and something else, you can make an SP Little Knight that can banish. Because you can easily summon an extra deck monster. That's the main reason for Anima, by the way. Just for context, because it's not actually for the removal effect, which can happen, but you know. I think it's between Goddess and Anima, mainly. I don't think this deck wants to be discarding cards for Unicorn, because it already discards a lot, but I guess if you have a transaction rollback and no furniture access, it would be good to discard it for Unicorn. I don't know how often that would happen, though. I don't know how often you would be able to go into the Unchained combo, end on Soul of Rage, you have like a transaction rollback in hand, and then you make Unicorn to discard it. I could see it happening, but not super often. Because most of the time you would have furnitures, right? I'll throw in the Anima for now, and then we can still reevaluate later. Alright. Okay. Alright. Let's think about some of the other things that we've just talked about. The first thing has nothing to do with the build itself. The one interesting point I feel like that came from this video is where, after Phantom Nightmare, where do you Ash Labrynth, right? Because everyone knows Ash is a pretty freaking good card against Labrynth. Where are you supposed to Ash this deck now? With the release of transaction rollback, essentially, right? Because previously, or also what people do on Master Duel right now, is people just hold their Ash for the Labrynth trap cards, right? Which it does have its merit. It definitely does have its merit to wait with Ash for the trap cards, because the trap cards are the most vital thing in this deck, and they are the most crucial thing that you want to stop. They're once per turn and all that kind of stuff, right? So I would say before Phantom Nightmare, I think it was reasonable to keep your Ash for these kind of cards. Now, transaction rollback being thrown into the mix might change a little bit. I think Ashing Pots was always correct. I think Ashing Pot of Extravagance, you could argue, was correct. I think Ashing Prosperity, I wouldn't disagree with you there. I would not Ash Prosperity against Labrynth. So basically, there are, let's break it down in a little bit of a simpler way. There are not that many things you can Ash. Well, there are some, but not too many. And I guess, yeah, that's it. That's it, really. And there's Extravagance. No, Extravagance already there. Prosperity, theoretically. Those are like the 5 things in this deck that you can Ash, assuming that they're not playing Ariane, which I'm not, Stevie. I'm not playing Ariane right now. But we talked about it earlier. But I think it might be good with what's it called? The black goat that laughs or whatever. I think then Ariane becomes viable, because I think right now you don't have enough good pairings with it, good cards that work with it. So, these are the 5 things you theoretically can Ash against the standard Labrynth list, whether they play Extravagance or Prosperity, whatever. Maybe they play both, whatever, you don't know. Before Phantom Nightmare, I think your Ash targets should almost exclusively have been these 3. you should not have ashed Ariana, I don't think, before Phantom Nightmare, and you should also, I would say you should not ash Pot of Prosperity. So the reason why you have to ash Welcome Labyrinth, first of all, because you might say, hey, what, Big Welcome is the way better one anyways, why am I ashing Welcome Labyrinth? Well, the thing is, if your opponent has both, you have to think through the scenarios, basically. Just understand the different scenarios that happen. If your opponent has both Welcome Labyrinth traps, and you don't ash Welcome Lab because you're like, well, I want to ash the Big Welcome, that's way more important. Your opponent, if they're smart, they're just gonna summon Lovely first. And Lovely stops you from ashing the other trap, right? So that's the one scenario, right? The other scenario is if your opponent doesn't have Big Welcome, because you don't always know that they have both, you know, maybe they didn't open, maybe they didn't search a single one, maybe they just went set 5 pass, and then they go Welcome Lab, right? You don't know if they have Big Welcome or not. But even if they do not have it, you still want to ash the Welcome, obviously, because then that's their only engine. You obviously want that. It's kind of similar to, I remember having this discussion when Branded was relatively new, and people were like, I don't think you should imperm the Aluber, you should wait for the Lubellion. That was something that, because what if they have Branded Fusion anyways? You know, that was the argument. If they already have Branded Fusion, you shouldn't imperm the Aluber. The problem with that argument back then, it was the same thing. If they already have Branded Fusion, they search Branded Lost, and then you can't imperm the Fusion either, right? And so it's basically the same argument but different cards, right? Like if they already have Big Welcome, you won't be able to ash it anyways, because Welcome Lab summons Lovely, which is essentially the Branded Lost in this scenario, right? So that's that. That's why obviously if they start with Welcome, you ash it. If they start with Big Welcome, you definitely ash it, because if you can ash this shit, do always ash it. The reason why against Furniture Lab, and I'm talking Furniture Lab, ashing Pot of Extravagance is good is because of this interaction between the two Labyrinth traps. If your opponent activates Pot of Extravagance to draw 2 cards, it is so likely that they're gonna get to both traps anyways, that I'm gonna be honest with you, you might as well ash the Extravagance and just hope they don't have enough engine. Because if you let the Extravagance go through, and then you also let like the Ariana go through and all that kind of stuff, you might as well just, like, your ash is not gonna really do enough, right? Like, because they're so likely to just find a furniture on top of what they already have, and, you know, because that's the thing, right? If they, this is a situation because you're working with there's information here. You don't have this information about their hand if this is what's going on. They go first, activate Extravagance. There's 4 unknown cards in their hand, right? And so once again, think about the scenarios here. If they don't have engine yet, you definitely want to ash the Extravagance, right? You definitely want to ash the Extravagance, because then they're gonna be stuck without any engine, and you're gonna have an easy time probably, right? If they already have engine, you might argue, okay, I would rather keep my ash for the engine, right? Okay, fair enough. However, if they already have engine, let's say in Ariana, and they activate Pot of Prosperity, the chance that they can get to both Labyrinth traps, basically invalidating your ash, is incredibly high, because all they need to draw is the trap that they're missing, the furniture. They can draw furniture and pretty much pick up the second trap right away. There's so many things that with this Extravagance that they can draw to invalidate your ash anyways, right? So this is why I think even before Phantom Nightmare, it was okay to, or a decent play to ash Extravagance, right? Now when it comes to Ariana is a different story, because ashing Ariana is something that I think was questionable. I don't think it was usually correct. That was genuinely a gamble on, do they already have engine or not? Because if they already have engine, ashing Ariana is not great. But if they don't have engine yet, then ashing Ariana is obviously better than letting them get a Big Welcome, which they can later on use in the graveyard and all that kind of stuff, right? But yeah, I think now the only thing that really changes with transaction rollback is that Pot of Extravagance, if you previously thought it was questionable whether you would Ash Extravagance or not. I think now you have to Ash Extravagance, because the chance with Transaction Rollback in the mix that they will find a way to play around your Ash is way too high if they resolve Extravagance. Like, if you let them draw 2 cards, you might as well delete your own Ash Blossom from your hand. Like, they're most, unless they actually break, the chance that they have a way to play through your Ash Blossom is incredibly high, because it's not only the hands that get to both trap cards that can play around Ash now, it's also every single hand that can assemble rollback plus furniture. Because if they have rollback plus furniture, they're just going like, they just go furniture, discard, set big welcome. If you then later on Ash the big welcome, okay, well, cool, big welcome goes to grave, transaction effect, copy big welcome, resolve it anyways, right? And so like, you might as well just Ash the Extravagance, because that's a guarantee that they will have 2 less cards to work with, right? No matter if they have combo or not, right? And that's particularly the reason why Transaction Rollback is so good for Labrynth, is because the deck genuinely isn't that weak to Ash anymore. It's like if they gave Branded a second Branded fusion, like almost, like unironically. So that being said, Ash the Extravagance if you can. You can even think about ashing Prosperity now, because like I said, before Transaction Rollback, I don't think I would have ashed Prosperity, but now that Transaction Rollback is a thing, the chance that, like, if they go Prosperity for 6, the chance that they freaking find Transaction Rollback to just ignore your Ash is... it's there, you know? It's like, if they already have Furniture and they go Prosperity, your Ash might not do anything. So I think ashing Prosperity is genuinely okay, especially because if they start with Prosperity, you also know they don't have Extravagance, which is another card eliminated from the equation. So I think it's fine to ash Extravagance, to ash Prosperity after Transaction Rollback. Completely reasonable. So the one thing that people were talking about, the one fringe case here, because I think the decision on these is relatively easy. Like, if you see these cards, if you see the draw cards now, you ash them. If they don't have the spells, you try to keep your ash for the traps. But what about Ariana, right? What about Ariana? So let's think about this. Well, when once again, it's a similar situation. Our opponent is going to go first, and he's going to have, or they're going to have 4 cards in their hand. Unknown cards. The only information we have about these 4 cards in hand is at this point that they're not Extravagance. Pretty much. Everything else we don't know. Because if they had Extravagance, they wouldn't start with Ariana. So there is... in which case would you want to ash the Ariana? In which case would you not ash the Ariana? Because, like, let's say they have... there is a lot of scenarios where if they want to play around Ash, they can, right? Like, for example, if I have Big Welcome in my hand already, if one of these is Big Welcome or access to Big Welcome, right? Let's say a furniture piece that could turn into a Big Welcome if I wanted to. If the Labrynth player normal summons Ariana, and it goes through, they have 2 options. They can either go greedy and go for like Coup Clock shenanigans, or they can just play it safe and grab a Welcome Labrynth, right? To go like for the lovely, to protect the Big Welcome. Both of those options are possible, right? This is a matter of it's basically at you have to decide what you think is your opponent is more likely to do, because if your opponent goes for a furniture here, not a furniture, if your opponent goes for a Coup Clock here, you could get rewarded for not ashing the Ariana, because if they Coup Clock and they commit more cards into your ash, right? They could also go Arias. Yeah, Herman is bringing up a good point. If they are playing the Unchained package, the best way to do it here, instead of going Coup Clock would actually be just go Arias, get the Big Welcome, and if you activate the Big Welcome and you get ashed, bring back the Arias and just go for the Unchained combo, right? So which is why, by the way, unironically, just the comment to the thing earlier that we watched, if you're playing the Unchained cards, I think that's why you need one Arias. Like, one is necessary. I think 0 is just not correct. But it's not a guarantee that they're playing the Unchained cards, right? I think the bigger problem, essentially, is if one of the cards in their hand is Transaction Rollback, which I would expect it to be a 3 of in every Labrynth deck, to be honest with you. If one of the cards in their hand is Transaction Rollback, you literally cannot Ash the trap cards effectively. Like, there's no shot. Like, if they have Transaction Rollback, they're not just gonna search the trap card immediately. They're gonna search they're gonna search a furniture piece that they don't have yet, and they're just gonna pop the rollback into the graveyard, and at this point, you're not gonna do anything about it, right? I honestly think it's arguable that you should Ash Ariana just to hope that, you know, they might be stuck on like a rollback in their hand, no engine, and that kind of stuff. But furniture plus rollback is something that makes it very dangerous to hold your Ash Blossom. Is basically the entire point of what I'm saying is, in general, holding your Ash, which is that's the difference here between ashing these three, right, and ashing and trying to ash the trap card, right? The only difference is, in these scenarios, you're ashing the opponent on their turn. In these scenarios, you're trying to keep the ash for your turn to make it so that you can play as uninterrupted as possible, right? The problem is with Transaction Rollback in the mix, I think it's just not likely that if you let them do everything on their turn, like you ignore what they do, essentially, and you just deal with it on your turn, I think it's not going to be enough, right? I don't think it's going to be enough to do that. So I think Extravagance, I would 100% Ash. Prosperity, I would say 80% sure that I would Ash a Prosperity. The other question is, if Prosperity is the first card in game 1, that's a whole nother thing, because you don't even know it's Labrynth yet, right? Like, what about that in general? Out of Prosperity, do you Ash it? It's a interesting question, because like, Prosperity for 6, of course, is a powerful searcher, but then it's like, if they already have, you know, like their Diabellstar or Wanted or whatever it would be. Well, I guess Wanted they would be using in the draw phase, but like if they go for like a Diabellstar or whatever, right? Like, I know some people that Ash Prosperity. I personally, it depends on my hand. You know, if my hand is bad and I have to just hope that they brick, sometimes I Ash it. But like, it's a little bit of a different story there, because that's another difference that is worth noting between Prosperity and Extravagance. If it's Extravagance, you know it's Lab, so you definitely Ash it. If it's Prosperity in game 1, you don't know if it's Ash, right? So yeah, that's that, right? That's that. So Extravagance always Ash, Prosperity depends. Ariana, I would lean towards, yeah, you can Ash Ariana, and it'd probably be a correct play. It'd probably be a correct play to Ash the Ariana. Because Ariana, like the Labrynth 2-card combos are really, really strong. And Ariana is basically a substitute for any part of these combos. Like, it doesn't matter which hand you draw, Ariana always substitutes for what you're missing. So just making sure your opponent does not search what he's missing right now is worth enough, I think, to Ash Ariana. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So one other quick thing, because we've gotten some input on the list, I want to keep it very close to what we built initially, just to put it to the test. Just a few things. I think I'm gonna leave it the way we built it, but just some added notes. I still think Nibiru is a viable option over Droll for the current format. For next format, no shot. Next format is Droll. Lady down to 1, I think is possible. Completely cutting areas, I think, is a mistake. Completely cutting areas is something that I don't agree with. Because, like I said, for example, a hand of Ariana plus a welcome trap, you do want to search areas to play around Ashe and be able to make your Unchained combo after. Multiple Ku Clocks is something that I think is possible. I think after watching the Gunther video, the Urena video, one thing I kind of want to do, I don't know, let me know if we're in the same boat, but his logic made sense to me to the point where, okay, Ku Clock is part of 2-card combos, whereas Arias is part of 3-card combos. I get that, right? I still don't think I would take out Arias completely. I think 1 is the bare minimum. But I could see swapping it around to 2 Ku Clock 1 Arias. That is one thing I could see myself doing. Or I could also see myself doing 2 and 2 with 1 lady. Right? I think you're gonna play 5 of these guys in some way, shape, or form. Right? 5 of these are quote unquote like the non-staple Labrynth dudes, right? I guess they're not dudes, but you know what I mean, the Labrynth cards, the non like of the non-obvious ones, right? Like it's kind of tricky to figure out the exact perfect ratio for these. I could see this 2-2-1, right? I guess. Maybe we try that. Yeah. Yeah. I could see that. I like that. I like that. Okay. I do think the Cult by the Grave is good. He wasn't playing it. I do like it. I think it's a good card. At the very minimum, you were gonna side deck it, but... And I'm gonna keep the Daruma Karma Cannon in to try it, but I'm gonna be honest with you, I would like to think that you don't actually need it. But it's gonna stay for now. So just to reiterate quickly, also the Farfa duel was planned for 3:30, which would be in 30 minutes. But Farfa messaged me if 4 was okay, which would be in an hour. So Farfa might be a little bit late. Do you still have a sleeve cheat code? I do not have a sleeve cheat code anymore. That cooperation unfortunately ended. That is Jover. Okay, so just a brief overview of what we've built before we hop into the side deck. It's gonna be 3 Ariana, full furniture lineup. Then 2 Ku Clock, 2 Arias. 1 Lady, 1 Lovely, 1 Sharvara for the Unchained combo. 9 Hand Traps with 3 Ashe, 3 Droll, 3 Imperm. 3 Extravagance, 1 Labrynth, 1 Called By. 3 Rollback, 3 Big Welcome, 2 Welcome, 1 Daruma, 1 Escape. I like this. I think this looks good. I think the one card that you can cut, or like Karma Cannon and Called By are like the 2 that I think you could even try to make it more combo heavy, like, you know, more Ku Clock, more Arias, more Lady with those kind of cards. You could try to fit more hand traps as well, but it looks good like this. I like it. And then the extra, the extra is gonna be 2 Rage, 2 Yama, 2 Muck, 2 Chaos Angel, 2 Typhon, and then 1 SP, 1 Dark, 1 Anguish, 1 Abomination, and 1 Anima. That looks good to me. Oops. The biggest reason why I hate Imperm is that when you present your deck and you're like, okay, here's my monsters, here's my hand traps, that Imperm doesn't really fit. Just a me issue, I think, though. Okay. That being said, let's hop into some side deck constructions for this beauty. And this is honestly also a pretty. I think I don't think we're gonna have a problem with the time. I think we're gonna be able to bridge the time until Farfa hops on. Also, Nano, thank you for the Prime. I missed that. I don't think I said that. 10 months already. Appreciate the Prime for the support. Thank you so much. The same goes for Vire8. Thank you for the 5 months. Appreciate you. Okay. Side deck. I think Nibiru is going to be here. Because Labrynth is the kind of deck I've talked about Nibiru when we built the runic deck, and I actually didn't put it in because I said like, hey, when you play runics and you can't really pair Nibiru with a different hand trap, it's not as good, right? If you can't pair Nibiru with a hand trap. In Labrynth, not the case. No problem at all. We have 9 hand traps in the main deck already. We have the bonus chance of opening like Kuklok plus furniture or Arias plus trap card. There's so many ways how we can turn our hand into Nibiru plus 1 interruption that Nibiru is phenomenal in this deck. Even against combo decks that normally play through just Nibiru, in Lab, it's okay because you like Veil, Imperm, Ash, Droll, Furniture plus Kuklok combos, Arias plus Ariana plus whatever combos, like it's enough, I think, to justify playing Nibiru. Another 2 cards that I want to try is Mudora and Keldo. Because they are really good discards in certain matchups. I'm mainly thinking of Tearlament. Danny, thank you for the 6 months. Also, Bobaloo, thank you for the 3 months and the kind words. I appreciate that. I'm glad you guys are enjoying the content and showing your support for it. Thank you. Mainly for Tearlament and Runic decks. Runic decks is something that we're gonna have to think about for this side deck, because keep in mind, this is pre-Phantom Nightmare. And pre-Phantom Nightmare, Runic decks are decently popular right now, and they are usually really good against Labrynth. So I think you are gonna want something for the Runic matchup, and those are a good start. They're not enough on their own, but they're a good start. Another thing that I have been thinking about is there is a bunch. Let me look at these. There's a bunch of these one-of side deck trap cards that we could theoretically play. Where did I had a pile of these somewhere. Oh yeah, here. There are cards where I can see their uses, right? I understand, like, okay, for specific matchups, if you can fetch a D-Barrier with Lady, if you can fetch Deflector with Lady against Runic, for example, if you can fetch Eradicator into this or that matchup, if you can fetch different Dimension Ground, all those kind of things, I understand. I see the reasoning behind those cards. It's not that I don't understand it, but I don't know how much room we really have for that situation, because that's a going first scenario, right? And I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't know if Labrynth really needs to side much for going first. And if I side something for going first, I think I would rather side something that pushes my engine through. Because I think going first with Labrynth, your engine is already so strong that as long as you can force it through, and I'm thinking of cards like Cross Out, Called By if we didn't main deck it already, maybe even Solemn Strike, to stop like Ash and Bell, right? I'm thinking those cards would be better to force through my engine rather than rely on a card that's only good if I can already resolve lady, because that's the thing. It's a similar argument to earlier, right? Let's say I'm playing against Pearly, for example, right? I'm playing against Pearly. I'm going first. I'm getting to the point where my lady resolves. I can set a trap card and I can immediately activate it because I also have Coup Clock access, right? In this situation against Pearly, I'm already in a winning position that I'm not sure I need D-Barrier. I could also just get my Karma Cannon, right? The Karma Cannon is kind of just like the one for everything kind of thing. But you might learn in testing, you might learn that there are matchups, and this is what I think the key to this is. I don't think you need a card for every matchup, right? But you need to figure out which matchup you are not winning if you're pulling this off, right? And I'm sure there is a matchup out there where if you do Lady into Karma Cannon, it's not actually good enough. And if you identify that matchup, then you can grab those. Branded and Runic? Okay, I'll give it to you. Runic might be one of them. Do you know what the problem with Runic is? You're not going to resolve this thing forever against Runic. You're not going to resolve this. It's not going to happen. Because they can chain block it every day of the week. Like, they just chain a Runic every time. It's kind of pointless to play a card like this against Runic when you won't be able to search it with Lady anyways. If you want to side something going first against Runic, like, you might as well just play 3 of. It's not like a searchable Lady kind of situation, right? And I think in that case, in order to use your side deck effectively, because the format is relatively diverse, you're not going to be able to play a lot of cards that are only for one matchup, which if I was going to do something like triple Magic Deflector or triple Dimensional Barrier to counter Runics, I think that's not effective because it's only for 1 or maybe 2 matchups and it's only for going first. I think it'd be much simpler to just do this. Because this covers Runic really well. It covers it going first and second, and it also covers like Fire King. So this is I think this is a much more viable way of doing it. Yeah. So I might see if we have 1 or 2. I'm gonna build this side deck, and if I have 1 or 2 extra slots, I might throw in 1 or 2 random traps to access in the right matchups. But in general, I'm not super convinced you need that concept, at least not in most matchups. For some, maybe for some matchups. Yeah, okay. Other cards that I wanted to consider or talk about. Bestials. Crossout. I was gonna talk about Super Poly because I thought this deck was one of the decks where you could play Super Poly and have room in the extra deck for the targets. Now that we've decided to put in the Unchained cards, I think I'm gonna not use Super Poly for now. The same goes for Ultimate Slayer. I was gonna talk about both of these cards. You guys know I love Ultimate Slayer. And this deck would in theory be a great deck for it. But it's just because we decided to try, or because I decided I wanted to try the Unchained package, I don't think I have the extra deck space to play around with these kind of cards. So just as a quick comment on these 2 cards, right? This is something I think Lava Golem and Sphere Mode in theory are really good in Labrynth. However, they suffer a different problem here, I think. And that is that you are already playing a decent amount of hand traps, and it's usually not good to try and make your deck do 2 different things when building your side deck. Like an example of this is like when you already play 12 or 15 hand traps in your main deck, you rather want to lean into that concept rather than playing board breakers on top of it. Like if you're, and I feel like it's a relatively simple like a relatively simple idea that you should probably get. But like if you hand trap your opponent, if your plan is to hand trap your opponent and then you have a Dark Ruler no more in your hand, this is not ideal, right? It's not ideal to have a Dark Ruler and then stop your opponent from making a board, because why am I throwing hand traps at my opponent when I have Dark Ruler anyways? You see what I'm saying? And I think in a deck like this, where in the main deck it's clearly Ash Troll Imperm, it is more beneficial to side deck more hand traps for specific matchups rather than siding board breakers like Lava Golem or Sphere Mode, even though in theory they are good. Like if I play against Vanadium, I can take in I can probably Sphere Mode them, set 5 and be Gucci, right? Like this, you know what I'm saying? Like, but I don't think this is a good idea for this deck, right? Typically, if you're wondering, like, okay, well, I'm playing like 12 hand traps, 15 hand traps, what else can I even play for non-engine then? This is where there are cards that pair well with hand traps that are not hand traps, right? I think that the important distinction to make would be cards that aim to break your opponent's board on their own, right? Those are not good with hand traps. Cards like Dark Ruler, Sphere Mode, Lava Golem, even Droplet to an extent, you name it. Those kind of cards are not great together with hand traps because their main goal is to let your opponent do their thing and answer it with one card and have as many cards left as possible to play through their hand traps or whatever else, right? And that doesn't work against every deck because not every deck's board gets outed by one card. But, you know, that's why we don't always do this sort of thing. But sometimes it works and so that's when they are good, right? And then you can obviously try to hand trap your opponent. The problem is, first of all, there might not be enough good hand traps for any given format or against any given deck. You know, some decks just aren't weak to that many hand traps. It's not possible to maybe find 15 good hand traps against a certain deck, right? So there are cards that are typically pretty good when you hand trap the opponent. And also in general, you need those sort of cards because not every deck, when you hand trap them even 2 or 3 times, is going to end on nothing. Especially right now, there's a lot of decks that still manage to do like a Baron or an SP or anything like that, right? And after you've hand trapped 2 or 3 times, that could really be a problem. Especially they might also have more hand traps in their hand. So the kind of cards that I really like are like the, let's call them low impact board breakers. But low impact is not a really fair statement because sometimes they are completely phenomenal, right? But like, you probably understand what I'm saying when you look at cards like Dark Ruler on the one hand or Sphere Mode, and then like a card like Enemy Controller, Cosmic Cyclone, Triple Tactics Talents, Fenrir, Pancratops, Phantasme, those kind of things, right? Those kind of cards I think are like the gap in between. That when there's not enough hand traps or you don't want to play just hand traps, those are the kind of cards you want to be looking at, right? And that's the kind of situation that we're in with this Labrynth deck, right? Because we don't want to play the hardcore board breakers in our side deck because it doesn't really make sense with the way this deck tries to play going second, right? And I think understanding the way your deck wins going second is important because just too many people just look at like, okay, Vanadium, Sphere Mode, go, right? And then you draw hands of like 2 hand traps, Sphere Mode, 3 other cards, your opponent has an Ash Blossom, you have no way of winning. So you have to understand how your deck wins going second. And this deck wins going second by simplifying the game state with hand traps and maybe some other cards like could be a Pancratops or anything like that. Talent's not in this deck because you can't really activate it, but like you see what I'm saying, right? I hope that was understandable. So we'll discard the Dark Ruler doesn't have room in this deck. So I think Pancratops is an option that I want to talk about. We're going to talk about this guy. We're going to talk about Skill Drain. We're going to talk about Strike. These cards, well, Book and Enemy Controller generally just aren't, I think, that great right now. Yeah, so I mean, for this deck, not for this deck in general, but like also just like generically, they're not very good. Thrust and Talents are not very good in in Labrynth because you just don't have a guaranteed way to make them live, because you sometimes have trap heavy hands and then you're not going to be able to force anything out of your opponent. I think Duster Lightning Storm could be an okay concept. I think Evenly could be an okay concept. We can talk about Fenrir. We can talk about more hand traps. Which ones? Yeah. This. Bell. Phantasme. Okay, that's plenty of stuff to talk about. That is plenty of stuff to talk about. All right. No Impulse Engine? I guess? I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't have the Impulse Engine ready right now. But I don't know. I guess, yeah, discarding rollback is cool. But discarding rollback alone, I don't know. Anyways, Evenly, I actually thought when we played against Pack with those, all the fire piles right now, I feel like are relatively weak to Evenly. Also, the Rescue Ace deck in general is relatively weak to Evenly. However, I don't think this is the deck for Evenly, because going second, there's a lot of hands where you summon stuff on your opponent's first turn, and you don't want to hold back on your Arias or anything like that. Or your Coup Clock Furniture combo only because you have an Evenly in your hand. That's like relatively risky. In the mirror match, unironically, I don't think Evenly is very good. Like, unironically, this deck, cards, I think this is a common misconception, that cards like Lightning Storm, Duster, Evenly are good against Labrynth. Unironically, I think all three of these cards are not good against Labrynth, because by the time you activate these cards, it's too late. You've already probably lost and been comboed to death by the furniture build. The furniture build does not care. The furniture build takes away like one card out of your hand, sets up whatever they want, has one or two hand traps in their hand. You lose your battle phase. They are not good. They are not good. Like, Evenly is probably the best one out of the three against Labrynth, but still, I don't think, like, you would just play Bell. One. Just play Bell. Bell is the best one. Bestials are okay, but Bell is the best card against Furniture Lab. That's all. Even Skullmeister could be okay. Skullmeister is okay because you can stop transaction rollback in the grave. You can stop big welcome bounce, but it's not great still, but awesome. So these cards, I don't like them against Labrynth. They are good against Rescue Ace. So only because I say they're not good against Labrynth doesn't mean that they are bad and you can't play them. It's just you need to understand what these cards are here for. Like, there was a time, and people always have a hard time getting rid of these sort of connections in their head that once were correct. It was correct there was a time where Labrynth got shit on by Duster and Evenly. But that is not the deck anymore. The deck doesn't work like this anymore, and that's why I think it's important to also look at a deck that maybe you're not playing Labrynth yourself, and that's why you don't really, you just assume it still does the same thing that it did back then, but you've just not been like keeping up to date with it. They're still decent. I don't think they're decent at all. Like, legitimately, look at this main deck. Look at this main deck and tell me what you're dustering. Best case scenario, you're hitting an Imperm. That's it. You're hitting an Imperm. Maybe they have the field spell, but it's not good. You're not. This is like saying Duster is good into everything that plays Impermanence, essentially, right? And maybe they have a field spell. It's not great. You don't side it in. It forces out interaction. I'm gonna be honest with you, Labrynth does not care if they have to activate their welcome and big welcome immediately. They really don't care. They do not care. And the thing is, even if you find a use for Duster, you have to think about what that card could be instead, right? Because you have put Duster into your side deck and then sided it into your main deck to replace another card. Like, that card could have been Bell or whatever, you know. It could have, there, if you are worried about Labrynth, there's way better cards dedicated to Labrynth, right? If you find yourself in a situation where you have Duster in your side deck because you think it's good against Rescue Ace, which is reasonable, right? And then you play against Labrynth and you realize, oh shit, I'm going second with my deck. I want to side out 4 cards. My side in is 3 bells and I'm looking for a 4th card to side in. Okay, if you then say like, okay, I'll side in Feather Duster because I might be able to get rid of like Imperm, Field Spell, Called By, some stuff, you know, force out their stuff early so I see exactly what's happening. Okay, reasonable, right? If you're sitting there doing siding and you're like, I need one more side in and this is the best thing I think I have, that's okay, right? But that's a different argumentation. That's a different thought process than building your side deck and being like, yeah, I'm throwing in a Duster to punish those pesky Labrynth players, right? So, yeah. That being said, I'm pretty sure we're gonna end up playing Bell for the mirror match for Fire King, and also because I'm considering playing Cross Out, because I think going first, it seems pretty nasty to just go Cross Out on your opponent's Ash or Bell and just combo on, like style on them like crazy. I feel like that's something we could try to do. But I don't know if we're gonna have the room for Cross Out, because that's definitely a luxury. Like in this deck and in general, always, in these sort of decks that are already good going first, siding stuff that makes going first even better, like in this case, Cross Out, Strike, or Skill Drain, would be absolutely a luxury, because you would more likely you'd be better off usually preparing for going second. But yeah. Lord of the Heavenly Prison, I think we can move aside relatively quickly because, once again, you don't care about Lightning Storm and Duster anymore, so you're not going to need this guy. So if you want to side anything for going first, I could think of 3 cards that I think could be viable. Number 1 was Cross Out to stop hand traps. Well, the first thing I thought of was actually Strike, but then I realized I think Cross Out is probably better than Strike, because this deck can combo on your first turn. Like, it doesn't always wait until your opponent's turn, so Strike would be kind of weird then. If I have like a Coup Clock and a Welcome Trap, I don't want to, like, it's, you see how it's awkward, right? I'm trying to combo on my own turn, not on my opponent's turn, so having to wait for Strike doesn't really make sense. Cross Out, I think, would be the best for that. That would be the best for this, because going first, if you want to make sure your stuff resolves, just side in. You can side in 3 bells if it's good in the matchup, or you can side in 1 bell just for Cross Out, and then you have Cross Out for Bell and Ash, which are really the only hand traps you care about. If you open Ariana, you can also dodge something like an Imperm if it's annoying for you, right? So there's that. But Cross Out, we're gonna have to see if I have room. Skill Drain. Skill Drain was a card that I don't think you needed, but I could imagine that you could cheese some people if everyone plays Bell, Ash, and all that kind of stuff, right? And you get, they throw hand traps at you like crazy, and you just go like, okay, cool, I'm just gonna flip up the Skill Drain. Do you also have an answer to that, right? I still think. So my logic is the following. If I don't get hand trapped, I don't need Skill Drain. I think we can agree on that. I think we can agree that this deck is most likely strong enough to win without Skill Drain if you just don't get hand trapped. If I get hand trapped, I would rather prevent the hand trap and just win that way instead of siding Skill Drain for that scenario, right? So that's my logic. That if I'm going to play one of these 2 cards, it's going to be Cross Out, not Skill Drain. How many cards is this? This is 11. We don't have much room. That's the thing. We genuinely don't have much room. This is already 11 cards, and I don't know if I'm happy just throwing in Cross Out here. But maybe. Like, it could be cross out. What other cards did I want to play? Like, I like Bestials. I do like Phantasme. Anchortops is also cool. Fenrir, I think is, if anything, it would be a main deck card. The problem with Fenrir is going second, you sometimes already have monsters, which doesn't make it great. Also, the fact that Fenrir gives you a discard for your furniture pieces is like, only is less relevant now that you have transaction rollback that you want to discard, so I'm not sure if I like Fenrir. Veiler could be okay if we really wanted more hand traps for specific matchups. So like, for the last 4 slots, we have to pick 4 out of these, I think, right? So and we could also consider playing one of traps. Like, if we only want 2 or 3 of these cards, we could play 1 or 2 random traps for specific matchups. So my thing with Phantasme, I freaking, you guys know I love Phantasme. I say this every stream at least twice. I love Phantasme. I'm gonna be honest with you, this side deck to me seems too tight to play Phantasme. It seems too tight. And I think we want something for the mirror match. I want something for the mirror match here. And because we have only Bell so far. I guess the shufflers are okay in the mirror match. Not just okay, they're pretty good. Extra lady, I mean, that technically you're right. You're not wrong. Technically, I think one of the best cards you could play for the mirror would be More Ladies. That card is so busted in the mirror match. It's so annoying if your opponent has this card. Like, it's so fucked up. I guess Crossout would also do that? Oh, I'm a fan of these double purposes. Oh, I like that. Oh, whoa, whoa. I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff. Crossout in the mirror is nasty, no? Oh. That might be that. Crossout is once per turn, but still. That would make it so we have a good side deck for the mirror match. A good side deck for the mirror match. That puts us to 14. What are we not prepared for with this side deck? I would like to have some amount of Bestials. It feels like a waste to not have Bestials. At least give me like 1 and 1, you know, 1 Magna, 1 Druis. Branded is ass with this. I mean, we still have Ash in the main deck. We have Bell, we have Shufflers. But so this would be 16. What is the least important card? 1 Cosmic, 1 Crossout. Probably 1 Cosmic. Are we vibing with this? It's very tight, this side deck. Kind of vibing with this. Why is Cosmic so important? So Cosmic, I don't think Cosmic is that important. I just genuinely think runic matchups are really hard. I think runic matchups are very, very hard for this deck, and so I think Cosmic is one card that can turn it around. For what do you use Bestials? Bestials are decent against Manadium. Bestials are decent in the mirror match. Bestials are good against Tearlaments. Bestials are still good if people still play Unchained. Bestials are also good against Bestial Runic. Like, Bestials are pretty solid right now. Yeah. With this, we don't have room for any one-off traps, but I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't think we need to. I genuinely don't think we need one of these to really win a matchup, but maybe if we find out we do need it, then we can swap something. Yeah, it depends. I like this. This is solid.